Because basically, when you speak up, they can't monetize any of those instruments on your account, even though their account is a closed account. See, the power is their capacity to claim lordship tenures over your estate. That's why it's important for people to comprehend here and here that you're standing on Morocco. If you don't comprehend that, your concept of looking at all this stuff will be absolutely wrong. And then, this is also why it's dangerous for Moors to approach this thing from the European perspective, the freedman's perspective. They're two different statuses, because the sovereign right that they're claiming doesn't belong to them. It's like you or me going to China and claiming to be the sovereign. No, you ain't. And just because some generations have passed, they're still colonists. That's who they are. They're Europeans claiming to be Americans. So therefore their status is what? Void in the first instance. See, because that's what the colonization is the theft of your birthright. And I think a lot of times when people look at this thing, they only look at exploitation from an attitude perspective. They're not recognizing that it has legal and estate implications. They don't look at it with that concept. They look at it as an attitude of them mistreating us, and we got to get them to stop mistreating us. And that's not it. They're claiming your estate.
I'm saying, like when you tell somebody else that, they think they be like, oh, you better not milk no white boy. They ain't going.
Yeah. And the whole deal is, that's why they claim to be white guys, but they ain't.
Yeah.
We are.
We three white people.
And so they traded places with us. But this is also why it's important for our people to really understand what's going on, because their concepts are wrong. And as long as they can get us to keep on picking up the dogmatic code systems, the connotative linguistics, then we ourselves are what you would call projecting a confirmation of their position. Because we're really the heirs of the estate. The problem of it is we're incompetent because our people don't know they're the heirs of the estate. We're always talking from a beggar position. You can start some Negro program to make sure we got some chips. And then we start marching and praying all over the place. And we're the heirs of the entire estate. And we're talking like the janitor of the garage.
What did you say again about sign as
Oh, we're gonna put that on the board. I'm just talking loosely right now. But ask the questions, that's so when the people come in, so we can all benefit. Because the subject matter, all the questions really boil down to estate. And what we want to make sure when we share the information with each other is that we comprehend that that's what we're talking about. And when certain questions are asked and you don't know that you're really talking about your estate, that means your concept of looking at the answers may not be correct. Or even your concept, I'm good, thank you so much. They look like crunchy.
Okay, because they foreclosed on my house. I filed bankruptcy. They foreclosed on my house. I filed bankruptcy. But then
in the mic.
Yeah. But if you go to the county court and look under the deed, it's still got my name on it, even though the bank.
Because it's yours. Listen, you're going to talk again. Make sure that the audience gets this. This is why every once in a while I go over this. Remember, it's your estate. They're accusing you of abandoning your estate. Are we clear?
Yeah.
Now,
even though
write this down.
With this,
no, I want you to back up because we're going to, when we start, we're going to get this on tape because it's important because people outside the country and people around the country will look at this information and it will give them a background, even though it may not be directed on the subject matter. So wait, we're going to put it on tape. both the question and the answer.
Okay. Now, I was giving you some, I'm with you on a lot of what you're saying, because when they sold the property, they published it in the newspaper, in the county paper.
Yeah.
And listen to what you were saying, I was supposed to then.
That's why this is why we emphasize, and we can't emphasize enough, that when you're corresponding with them, this is what we're going to have to do as a standard with us. Make sure y'all take it back to Little Egypt, right? Organize, even with yourself. You understand? Set up a website that's only for publishing your legal correspondences with the corporate state entities. When they're corresponding with you and they're sending things, constructs through the mail to you, when they send it, you construct it, give qualifications, subtitles, or footnotes, and put it on the site. When you send out to them, then you sequence it, meaning that if I never met you, right? Whereas I'm going on a website, just like a newspaper, I can look the sequence of their initial entries to you and your correspondences. So it leaves both the chronology / dates and the nature of their correspondence is not left vague. There's nothing missing. It's exposed to the public eye. Do you understand? They can't hide. Keep in mind, the fundamental operations of the U.S. democracy system of the post-militia operates from the perspective that they know that what they're corresponding to you usually stays within a small pocket, with you stressed out and worried and drinking 2 cups of coffee trying to figure out how to respond, or how to pay up or give up your property, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're really under real pressure, out of ignorance and a lack of knowledge, you go hire a barrister of England thinking that he's going to represent you, and he rapes you some more because you don't know he's an officer of the court. And all he is a bounty man with a tie that you just paid.
That's what
And
happened.
a spy.
Exactly what
Oh, I already know what happened, but you need to know what happened.
You need your property.
But you need to know what happened.
Yeah.
You see the whole point?
Yeah.
And from the beginning, they're operating from the perspective that you're a ward. Now, if you have bought, or what you call transacted business, in the European name or cognomen without qualification or without a title of the heir to the estate, you don't own it in the first place. You're sharecropping. You need to know that in the first instance. It's not, this is where it's the duty and the responsibility of those grand sheiks around this country who's been delivered this information and charged with the duty of dispensing it to the heirs of the estate, which is the restoration of the birthright. However, you already know, and I already know, that most of the such persons have not done that. Instead, they have been making people followers of themselves and telling people this was religion, when it's actually a return of the birthright. Do you understand? And so this corruption has caused us to go a 100-year cycle and suffering in areas that shouldn't even be taking place right now. Therefore, for the few who are honest to what this movement is about, it must be explained what's going on so that you don't go through that. So what do? They steal your estate, and you paid more fiat in the process, and they still steal your estate. Not knowing that the foundation of the problem is your status. You see? And that you didn't even know you had an estate. Go ahead. We're going to repeat this for the record because at about 7 we're going to start officially.
Todd, another thing they did was they refused to cut the gas off in my name.
Sure.
It's still in my name. I'm on the gas company.
And
they told me in order for them to cut the gas off, I have to give them access to the place. I said, well, they done locked me up.
Now, do you understand estate law fundamentally?
No.
Do you understand sharecropping fundamentally?
I mean, my
Just
grandfather
in
did.
general, how do you feel?
Something my
What are
grandfather
your
did.
thoughts on sharecropping?
It's a robbery.
Get in the mic. Well, we know it's robbery, but what is it? Come on, just talk. What does your consciousness tell you? In other words, use your basic common sense and talk about what you think sharecropping is.
Sharecropping is when you allowing somebody to live on your property and they paying you interest on whatever y'all producing.
No, this is what it is. Sharecropping is a feudal law system, whereas they rob you of your land and estate, put it in their trust, and then rent your land or estate back to you as a tenant or a franchisee under privilege, and thereby steal all your labors and your energies until you're no longer useful to them. Then they boot you off the land. And then find another serf. Connotatively, we call them slaves now, but there's a misused word, but for what its connotative meaning is, that's what's happening to you. That's what happens to people over and over again. But because in reality, it is your estate. You just don't know yourself, and you don't know the truth of the land. That's why your name continues, because they're leaning it against your estate. They're acting as trustees on your estate. Therefore, what you say don't count. What they say counts. It is no different than a parent is telling a child that's a drug addict, this is what's going to happen. And you say, how can they get my room to Fred? Because they said so. You kind of understand? It ain't about justice. It's about abuse of authority under forfeiture. Forfeiture is a feudal law title for a trustee. This is what's happening. This is why it's so important. You know, we can't emphasize enough. And interesting, like last night, I did a radio show with Sister Yafa. On Civil Alert. And a lot of this stuff, the same dynamics are always involved. And a lot of the people have a lot of information. This is redundant. What is continual is that you recognize people are well studied in a lot of information. But not enough people have crossed the threshold of spiritually really knowing who they are. They're approaching a lot of remedies from a point of the letter perspective. This says this, 1 and 1 equals 2. I know 1 and 1 equals 2, but the spirit of connection is not quite there. When the spirit of connection becomes there, you need no paper. Although you may put something on paper. It'll come out your mouth as soon as you open it. That's where we need to get you at. That's where you need to be. That's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to smack you around a little bit because you already know the answers. It's just that by us being under the mystery system for so many generations and then messing with our gene pool, that our people's pineal gland is a little bit blocked. And so we're trying to get the people unconstipated on a spiritual level so you can answer your own questions by giving you things to remember. But the memory is in another time, in another body. But you're not new. And so we kind of smack you around because Rome is beating you up. Us up.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You keep saying when we officially start, we're trying to figure out when you can officially
I was figuring when you're ready.
We're ready.
All right, let's ready.
We're ready.
Now, we're going to back up. We're going to... Don't take them shoes. You know they're going to steal your shoes. Sis can't pick me up, right? And
I just done it.
she had her slippers on, right? And so she said, you know I got 6-inch heels there. I said, you do all right. I seen her get out of the car. I said, Don't put the slurs back on because you ain't gonna get them shoes fast. I'm not gonna take them kicks, boy. Them kicks are tight, ain't they?
Yeah, they tight.
Yeah. All right, Islam, I ain't picking on you, but all right, you got it going on.
Islam family.
Islam.
It's
Here, here,
no, it's just not pushed on. Push the button. Green. Turn it off. That's okay. Islam family.
Islam.
Just like to welcome you here for another one of our bi-monthly sessions with Master Educator Taj Tarik Bey. And this man, who I want to say that he is so sought after. The knowledge that he contains in this frame that he talked about, I heard him just saying something about who you used to be. You knew a lot of things, but you were in another body. The knowledge and the wealth of knowledge that is contained in his physical being is phenomenal. I say that because many of you who I see sitting here come here time after time just to make sure you are getting what comes out of this man. He could sit here and just stand here and just rattle it off, like it's just, just talking normal, regular. And many of us, our heads spin. Not everybody. Some of you are astute, or just about, as our brother Taj. But what I'm saying is people travel far and near to hear him. And I'm happy that not only that you're supporting our brother Taj Tarik Bey and his commitment to House of Ram, but that you too have committed to House of Ram by coming and showing your support. So without further ado, I want to present our master teacher, our master educator, Taj Tarik Bey.
First, I want to read a small verse from the Book of the Sun, the Heliotext, known to most as the Bible. And I'm going to go into the Revelation, and we're going to talk a few things, understanding that the foundation of this is Kabbalistic. So understand this is allegorical, are we clear? But if you don't know that it's allegorical, your concepts will be wrong. So let's go into the geometry and math of it, all right? You all got this? You got this? We're going to erase this. All right. Can somebody do me a favor and
I guess.
work this out while I prepare this? So let's look at the book of Revelation, chapter 12 and chapter 13, and we're going to take some points from them. And I want you, while we're going through this, to go into the square. The square is the cube, or the cube is also being on the square, but the square is in a circle. So think on that level, because this is absolutely Kabbalistic. Are we clear? So I'm qualifying before I go into the book so it doesn't put you to sleep. All right? Well, the Book of the Sun, the Heliotext, the Holy Bible, chapter 12 of the book of Revelation, and the dragon overcome of the beast with the 7 heads. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 7 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another woman in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads, and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew the thin part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. As soon as it was born. As soon as it was born. Kabala in the square.
What chapter was that?
This is chapter 12, verse 1, 2, 3, 4 of the book of Revelation. Verse 5. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. 1,260 days. And days, understand, equates degrees. Are we clear? Question before you in the square. Right? Right? How much is 3 scores?
60.
What does that relate to? Say it, Brother Tarik.
Roughly an age. It's 12 ages.
12 ages.
That must be important so that you can read them scriptures properly. So that means the old lords are leaving and the new lords are coming in. Thus, the revelation of the new stars. Now, why is the woman, let's go back to chapter 12 of the book of Revealing, in the first instant that presents the woman. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, S-U-N, and the moon under her feet. And upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So let's go into the circle, right? Running out of ink with this. Excuse me just 1 minute. See if I have some more. So basically, you will see this carried with these, excuse me, and sometimes it's spelled with an O. That's any member of the clan under the dragon. Are we clear? Now, what is it that they have with the woman? What is the concern? What is the hypothecate and hypothecation? So let's talk about the lesson of the Book of the Sun. Now, how many of you saw the cover of the questionnaire that Noble Drawley presented to you? How many are familiar with the cover of the questionnaire? Anybody got a questionnaire with them? Questionnaire that's delivered to you. Now watch this. I didn't bring everything with me because I'll be having to carry too much. But just as when I asked the question, how many are familiar with the cover to the questionnaire, I know many of you are, but one maybe hand rose up, if you understand. So that indicates what? Problem. Because 99% of hands should have went up. Because that's your first paragraph. That's your first few sentences, few verses in the book of Revelation. Why does Noble Drawley have woman in his hands and humanity is written on her womb? Because it represents.
Is she unconscious? Woman unconscious?
Loud. Send it, give them the mic. Yes, she's unconscious. Yes.
Woman unconscious?
Yes. What else is happening? You see 9, what? What do you, look at the graphs. We keep in mind that pictures always speak 1,000 or more words. What is on the cover? Describe it.
Noble Drawley told the woman in his arms while she's unconscious.
Stay in the mic.
Noble Drawley told the woman unconscious in his arms.
Yes, and how's he standing? 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on a rock. What else do you see? 9 drops of water coming off her body. and humanity is written on her womb. And she's unconscious as if she's drowned, but yet she still lives. And in the background, there's a shadow in the ether, and it has written in that cares of the world, right? She's apparently, visually, not necessarily pregnant, yet humanity is written on her womb, clear as day. Who awaits her, and why?
Her sons.
And why is he bringing her out of the water, out of the cares of the world? She gave him birth first, but she's unconscious. So her sons have to protect her and rescue her so that the remedies will come, because the comforter comes through her. That's why the dragon wants to devour the child, because it represents his demise. Since he's so bad, why don't he just eat her? Then he got 2 meals.
He's scared of her.
Because this, remember, this is Kabbalistic, allegorical, because she's the closest thing that he will find to what you think or know is God, even though she is asleep or unconscious. Well, how do you say God's unconscious? According to how you look at it. If you look at it literally, you will not understand it. If you look at it Kabbalistically from the square, you will understand exactly what you're looking at. So things must be reversed. It must be cleaned up, because she's the key to the salvation of humanity. But the people are looking for the popes, the priesthood, as the vicar and the substitute for the Christ degree on the planet. But not only have they been raping the babies, they've been killing them, raping them, and everything else. But yet the people look to them for guidance through the 7 disciples. But the woman has the 7 stars on her head. Why is no one paying attention to that?
She also doesn't know she's asleep, Brother Sarge.
Because they've been distracted by the dragon. And that's who they've been following. So let's look at, remember what we talked about before, everything operates, and this is putting in things in perspective a little bit. Right? Past, present, and future. Past, present, and future. Right? You can look at this from another perspective as the egg or the ovum, and then the physical body and the spiritual body. You can look at this as a third rock from the sun. You can look at this as 3 dimensions. You look at this as the equilateral pyramid with 120 degrees angles comprising 360 degrees, but you go to the center to rule. All things are governed consciously from that level in the physical body in governments all over the planet. What must be brought to you to remind you, really to remind you of your responsibility, is that you got to get back to this. They're using it to rule you, but they're using it on the low point, which means everything that has a front has a back. Everything that has a higher vibration also has a lower vibration. Therefore, you must rise from the depths of ignorance into the light. Are we clear?
Yeah, clear.
But in the physical body, you can only be in the moderate. You can only reach the Christ degree in the body. so that you're capable of seeing the life. Do you understand? This is how you're going to kick the life's butt. All right? So, with the principle of the Trinity, the dark side of the priesthood hypothecates present, current. Wish these boards were a little bigger, but let's talk. So they triangulate to devour the child. Hypothecate, which means in the abstract, yet manifested in the physical. They make what you call authoritative claim on the issue of the womb. And thus, the sale, the birth certificate, hypothecates present bodies, which means as we sit in the present form. The marriage certificate mars age, both the age and rage. It is actually a spell cast, because the real union between man and woman is divine. And it is a matra, which is mother, sanction, unity in nature, divine. They introduce the spell cast because there's really marriage with the I. So it's already a cast spell, and then they create certificates to devour the unborn children, and with this certificate, they hypothecate the seeds in the womb, devouring the child. Do you understand? And then for those that she has a chance to produce that they don't destroy, they create the driver's license. And that hypothecates the liberties and the movement of life capacities, your capacity to make a living to feed them children. And all the service goes back to the dragon. And this is why they maintain their secret societies. And this is why they also create the different instruments, particularly for those who are in service to Rome, to aid them in their mission to declare their vicarship or their Godhead position on the earth. And this is where it's mentioned in the book of Thessalonians, when the Christ degree says, I told you all, remember when I was yet with you, that they will declare themselves as God, sitting on the throne, claiming to be God, and you all act like you don't remember that I told you these things? This is where they take the vicarship. And so on a mundane degree, or on a mundane level, you go to the square and the circle and understand what is revealed to you, that it was written to prepare you to beat Goliath. That's how this book is supposed to be used. And it's totally Kabbalistic. Are we clear? That must be understood before you go into it, so don't put the people to sleep. Because the low priests have tampered with it. However, the truth is still there. You just got to know how to dig it out. Do you understand? So they don't mystify you. Now let's interchange, and keep in mind what this represents is that this is transferring in the quarter, in the upper quarter, from what? Where are you coming? From Pisces to Aquarius. So you're in this square of the ether plane. But you're in a greater circle that represents a larger clock. And so they're afraid, yet at the same time they're bold. But they know that their time is up. And so we're coming for their tail. Now, do you understand that book? Therefore, everything they do and every instrument that they have issued to you are designed to hypothecate. Are we clear? Now, the hypothecation is, whereas I create an instrument, and just like Dr. Nyla, got them cool kicks on, so sis said, man, did you see them kicks that sister got? And so I write some certificate and put a bond against her shoes and she don't know about. And then without her permission, sign a name that sounds like hers, and I put it in all caps, which creates a straw. Meanwhile, she's going about her business, and I put a lien on her, and then she starts experiencing all these shocked situations. They're called psychic attacks. Then she has to pay me so that she can continue to wear them shoes. That is hers. But yet, physically, I don't have them. But yet, spiritually, I have a claim on them related to a bondage in the physical world. I have devoured her rights and liberties. That is the serfdom that's done through these instruments, from the spirit plane brought into the physical on the dark side of the priesthood. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
This is what you're fighting. This is what has caused your injury. Then they have the militia, the Jesuit militia, which is headed by the U.S. democracy system, to go to and fro the earth, devouring nations, to steal their resources by virtue of physical hypothecation, to maintain the fraud of the dragon, where he has not necessarily successfully completed his claim on humanity and the earth. Are we clear?
Yes.
And so that it doesn't appear, because they have to deceive you, so it doesn't appear that they're maintaining slavery so they can look innocent, if you get the point. This is why the rule of law, although it comes from a physical canon. You know how they say canon law? Right? Shooting situations. Right? They come from tampering with the books out of their original form, and then they come with canon law. That's the law of the popes. That is demonstrated through the skull and bones activities of undermining the Constitution, which is based in nature's law and nature's God as presented to you in the Declaration of Independence. From deists who were brought into structured government under the authority of the Moroccan Empire, bringing the Europeans into government and giving the titles of ministers plenipotentiary, namely speaking, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, wearing their fez. And so in your spare time, you're going to do some research into their original papers, and you can see that every one of them condemned the church. Even though publicly they will teach the people that they were right-wing Christians, which they were not. And the reason that's important for you to understand, because you need to understand also why the original republic was set up by the Moors and the European sons were brought in. That's another lesson in itself. Because those European sons and daughters were running away from the tyranny of the popes of Rome in Europe, which is plaguing you today. So let's talk about these issues, and then we're going to go into our interchange. Communicate. Share information so that we can look at these instruments, and then we can look at another way to claim your estate. Are we clear?
Yes.
Which essentially has to be done. And I'm coming from this angle because sometimes you have to come from what people know and take them to other parts that they're not familiar with. Sometimes if you take people to the higher degrees and just speak to them, it goes over their head. So you come with what people know, what they're familiar with, then you take them to the square. Come at them on the square and take them to its Kabbalistic meaning. Are we clear? So that it makes sense to them. So that even if they've tampered with the books, they still can't beat those who know the truth. You see the point? Now, let's go into their secret treaty of Verona. And this, again, and most of you are familiar with this, but I'm putting this in some perspective for others who may be less familiar, so that they can comprehend the work of the dragon. All right? From the congressional records for the United States of North America, we're going to come from 3-point positions. One, with the introduction of and a short discussion of the secret treaty of Verona. And this is the foundation of the politics of the dragon. To create or to set up the standard of discovery. Now, as you all understand and as you all know, in the general history books, they refer to the so-called discovery of the Maghrib al-Aqsa, or the Western Hemisphere. That's Morocco, the most extreme west. They say that the Romans, the Europeans, discovered a new world. And Columbus and his boys came to the west, and they discovered a new world. And so the general concept that many people have is that the discovery was like they uncovered something, right? And that's how it's taught. Am I correct? Right. That's how it's taught. That's not what it is, though. It's really the doctrine of discovery. And the doctrine of discovery is set forth by the popes of Rome under the Inquisition operations under Pope Innocent III, and through his general, Thomas de Torquemada. And the doctrine of discovery is where they are going to and fro the earth, claiming the estates of the true heirs of the planet. Claiming the estates of the heirs of the West. Are we clear? And those claims are by virtue of hypothecation, and some of the claims are out and out murder and altering the estates of the heirs. Altering the estates of the heirs into the states, and that's what you're seeing right now. When you're looking at all the so-called state corporations, they're really hypothecated estates. Are we clear? And constitutes the provinces and regencies of the Moorish Empire. That you will also recognize, you all got this? You all got this? You'll also recognize with some of the discussions this is for some of your historical research. And keep in mind, they will change names in order to hide history. So they're sometimes called the Moorish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, or the Saracen Empire, so that you don't trace it. Are we clear? This is one of the more contemporary meetings for the ongoing hypothecation of the Moorish Empire, which is your birthright. These are snippets so that you can kind of have a view of the politics here, so that you can put in perspective history that absolutely ties to you, but if you're not aware of, you might be looking at history from an 1865 slave mentality, which is not how you should be looking at history. Are we clear?
Clear.
When you're looking at the so-called, quote-unquote, slave period in North America, all you're looking at is the reintroduction or the imposition of artificial dark ages upon the descendants of the same Moors that brought the Europeans out of the dark ages with the Renaissance. Are we clear? It is an artificial construct and political activity of artificially putting or pushing the heirs into the dark ages, who are the descendants of the ones who brought them out of the dark ages. Thus, that sets the groundwork for the politics that is running the planet Earth today. All right? Are you following me? So now let's go into the secret treaty of Verona so that you can comprehend their mental and their activities in their relationship to you, how they're dealing with you, what their motivations are. Are we clear? Congressional record, the Senate. The 64th Congress, first session, volume 53, part 7, page 6781, day 25 of April 1916. The North Gate, North America, etc. And this is all, would be Senator Owens anyway. I wish to put into the record the secret treaty of Verona of November the 22nd, 1822, showing what this ancient conflict is between the rule of the few and the rule of the many. And I wish to call the attention of the Senate to this treaty because it is the threat of this treaty which was the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine. It throws a powerful white light upon the conflict between monarchical government and government by the people. The Holy Alliance, under the influence of Metternich, the Premier of Austria, in 1822 issued this remarkable secret document. American Diplomatic Code, 1778 to 1884, Volume 2, Eliot, page 179. Secret Treaty of Verona. It contains 7 articles. Article 1, the high contracting powers being convinced that the system of representative government is equally as incompatible with the monarchical principles as the maxim of the sovereignty of the people with the high divine right, engage mutually in the most solemn manner to use all their efforts to put an end to the system of representative governments in whatever country it may exist in Europe, and to prevent its being introduced in those countries where it is not yet known. Article 2, Secret Treaty of Verona. As it cannot be doubted that the liberty of the press is the most powerful means used by the pretended supporters of the rights of nations, to the detriment of those princes, the high contracting parties promised reciprocally to adopt all proper measures to suppress it. Not only in their own states, also in the rest of Europe. Secret Treaty of Verona, Article 3. Pay attention to the details. Convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep the nations in the state of passive obedience, which they owe to their princes. The high contracting parties declare it to be their intention to sustain in their respective states those measures which the clergy may adopt with the aim of ameliorating their own interests. So intimately connected with the preservation of the authority of the princes and the contracting powers join in offering their thanks to the Pope. Offering their thanks to the Pope. Offering their thanks to the Pope for what he has already done for them, and solicit his constant cooperation in their views of submitting the nations. Secret Treaty of Verona, Article 4. The situation of Spain and Portugal unite unhappily all the circumstances which the treaty has particular reference. The high contracting parties, in confiding to France the care of putting an end to them, engaged to assist her in the manner which may the least compromit them with their own people and to the people of France by means of a subsidy on the part of the two empires of 20 million of francs every year from the due of the signature of this treaty to the end of the war. Secret Treaty of Verona, Article 5. In order to establish in the peninsula the order of things which which existed before the revolution of Cadiz, that's C-A-D-I-S, it's also spelled with a K. And to ensure the entire execution of the articles to the present treaty, the high contracting parties give to each other the reciprocal assurance that as long as the views are not fulfilled, rejecting all other ideas of utility or other measures to be taken, they will address themselves with the shortest possible delay to all the authorities existing in their states and to all their agents in foreign countries, with a view to establish connections tending toward the accomplishment of the objects proposed by this treaty. Secret Treaty of Verona, Article 6. This treaty shall be renewed with such changes as new circumstances may give occasion for, either at a new Congress or at the court of one of the contracting parties, as soon as the war with Spain shall be terminated. Secret Treaty of Verona, Article 7. The present treaty shall be ratified and the ratifications exchanged at Paris within the space of 6 months. Made at Verona on the 22nd day in November 1822. Back to Senator Owen. After the signing of Australia, Metternich, France, Chateaubriand, Prussia, Bernstedt, Russia, Nesselrode. Back to the senator. And I asked to have printed in the congressional record this secret treaty because I think it ought to be called now to the attention of the people of the United States and of the world. And this evidence of the conflict between the rule of the few versus popular government should be emphasized on the minds of the people of the United States, that this conflict now waging throughout the world may be more clearly understood. For after all is said, the great pending war springs from the weakness and frailty of government by the few, where human error is far more probable than the error of the many, where aggressive war is only permitted upon the authorizing vote of those whose lives are jeopardized in the trenches of modern war. Mr. Shafroth, Mr. President, I should like to have the senator state whether in that treaty there was not a coalition formed between the powerful countries of Europe to reestablish the sovereignty of Spain and the republics of South and Central America. Mr. Owen, I was just going to comment upon that. And I'm going to take just a few moments to do so because I realize the pressure of other matters. And the Holy Alliance, having put a Bourbon prince upon the throne of France by force, then used France to suppress the constitution of Spain immediately afterwards. And by this very treaty gave her a subsidy of 20 million francs annually to enable her to wage war upon the people of Spain and to prevent their exercise of any measure of the right of self-government. And the Holy Alliance immediately did the same thing in Italy by sending Austrian troops to Italy, where the people then attempted to exercise a like measure of liberal constitutional self-government. And it was not until the printing press, which the Holy Alliance so stoutly opposed, taught the people of Europe the virtue of liberty, that finally one country after another seized a greater and greater right of self-government, until now it may be fairly said that nearly all of the nations of Europe have a very large measure of self-government. However, I wish to call to the attention of the Senate that the country to this important history in the growth of constitutional popular self-government, and the Holy Alliance made its powers felt by the wholesale drastic suppression of the press in Europe, by universal censorship, by killing free speech and all the ideas of popular rights, and by the complete suppression of popular government. The Holy Alliance, having destroyed popular government in Spain and in Italy, had well-laid plans also to destroy popular government in the American colonies, which had revolted from Spain and Portugal in Central and South America under the influence of the successful example of the United States. And it was because of the conspiracy against the American republics by the European monarchies that the great English statesman Canning called the attention of our government to it. And our statesmen then, including Thomas Jefferson, took an active part to bring about the declaration by President Monroe in his next annual message to the Congress of the United States that the United States should regard it as an act of hostility to the government of the United States and an unfriendly act if this coalition or if any power of Europe ever undertook to establish upon the American continent any control of any American republic or to acquire any territorial rights. And this is the so-called Monroe Doctrine. And the threat under this secret treaty of Verona to suppress the popular governments in the American republics is the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. It is the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. It's the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. This secret treaty sets forth clearly the conflict between monarchical government and the popular government, and the government of the few as against the government of the many. It is a part in reality of developing popular sovereignty when we demand for women equal rights to life, to liberty, and to the possession of property, to an equal voice in the making of the laws and the administration of the laws. This demand on the part of women is made by men, and it ought to be made by men as well as by thinking, progressive women, as it will promote human liberty and human happiness. And I sympathize with it, and I hope that all the parties will, in the national conventions, give their approval to this larger measure of liberty to the better half of the human race. The experience we have had has made us acquainted with the many advantages that have been taken to the society of its intervention in the marriages of the House of Austria and of those which have affected in other countries, in other kingdoms, France, Poland, and in various duchies. Forasmuch assembling, proposing with prudence, selecting choice persons who may be friends and families of the relatives and of the friends of the society, it will be easy to gain the princesses, making use of their valets, by that coming to feed and nourish with the relations of friendship, by being located at the entrance in all parts, and thus become acquainted with the most intimate secrets of the familiars. Instructions, secret instructions of the company of Jesus, chapter 2. This is a short introduction of the discussion with the knights in the Senate. Are we clear? It is to let you know that all politicians are aware of this. They discuss it. They discussed it. And the principle of operations is to overthrow all Republican forms of government. I suggest to you, to all of you, that as you read some of the earlier books, history books, in your schools, some which have been removed as of late years, where they make reference to the institutionalization of slavery in the southern states, one of the strategies that was done was the dissolution of all Republican forms of government in the southern states because of its relationship to the Negro. And of course, you know the Negro is a code word for defeated Moors. So recognize that that principle of operations goes back to the Treaty of Verona. All right? So now let's update and go to the congressional records again to show you the social political relationship so that we can have some rational discussions on principles that have been presented to you from time to time in the House of Ram and why it's presented to you. Congressional record, United States, North America, the 73rd Congress, second session, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the apostle of irredeemable paper money. In the House of Representatives, day 24 of January, Wednesday, 1934, Mr. McFadden speaks before the House. Mr. Chairman, a citizen of the United States has asked me to explain for his benefit and for the benefit of other United States citizens the real meaning of the Roosevelt Gold Bill, the bill which the House passed last Saturday by 360 votes to 40, with 32 members not voting. Mr. Chairman, a law against the Constitution is void The gold bill creates a nullity. Old John Marshall said that the words of the Constitution are not to be twisted out of their plain, everyday meaning. The Constitution says that Congress shall have power to coin money and to regulate the value thereof. This, Mr. Chairman, means that Congress has power to make coins of metal and to stamp the true value upon each of them. It does not mean that Congress shall refuse to furnish the people of the United States with an adequate coinage, and it does not mean that a theoretical amount of an uncoined metal shall be called a coin. And a coin is an object which may be seen and felt and even heard if one tests the ring of it. Mr. Chairman, the gold bill attempts to cut out, delete, and destroy that part of our great written Constitution pertaining to the power of Congress to coin money and to regulate. That is, to stamp on the metal coin the value thereof. The bill is unconstitutional on its face because it seeks to nullify the Constitution. Moreover, it is a bill which is contrary to the common law and to the law of custom upon which the common law rests. It attempts to legalize robbery. It attempts to force to deprive the people of the United States of their right to the currency of the Constitution. It gives the international bankers power to send the gold belonging to the people of the United States to a place of deposit reserved to themselves in Europe. Mr. Chairman, the gold bill cannot become a valid law by any constitutional means. Now, Mr. Chairman, let us look at the bill to see if the legal hirelings of the Bank of England and their agents, the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks, have been able to disguise its purpose. Let us see if they were able to clothe the bristly skeleton of their greed with echoes of glib religiosity, according to the fashion set by the present administration. And the first thing that meets my eye is the title. We read, "A bill to protect the currency system of the United States to provide for a better use of the monetary gold stock of the United States and for other purposes." It is indeed a bill to protect the present currency system of the United States, but it is a bill to protect it from the just wrath of the United States citizens. It is a bill to save for the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks their gigantic monopoly of a special paper currency which they steal from the Treasury and upon which they charge the people of the United States a heavy toll of interest. It is indeed a bill to provide for better use of the monetary gold stock of the United States, if better use means the issuance of two sets of obligations against one piece of security. It is indeed a bill for quote-unquote other purposes. And those purposes which the proponents dare not mention. He's really talking about the Treaty of Verona. Are we following? Now, among the purposes of the bill not mentioned in the title is that of pretending to take into the Treasury the gold now held by the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks, and a great effort has been made to have it appear that the Federal Reserve banks are unwilling to surrender the gold they now hold to the United States Treasury. This effort is dishonest for two reasons. First, the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks have already made a profit of some billions of dollars out of the president's gold seizures, and those billions were stolen from the people of the United States. And second, that the transfer is fictitious. Hypothecate. Point. The president sought to convince members of the Congress that the Federal Reserve banks were resisting his efforts to have the Treasury take possession of the gold. But one of the members of the Federal Reserve Board spoiled this argument by declaring that the Federal Reserve Board had asked the president to have the Treasury take the gold. You see, Mr. Chairman, under this bill, the United States Treasury has to pay for the gold, although the gold belongs to the people and was taken away from their bank deposits and their cash registers and their pocketbooks in the first place and put into the Federal Reserve banks. And although the Federal Reserve banks tricked and fooled the people into giving it to them for the Federal Reserve currency, which they now refuse to redeem, and although the gold does not belong to the Federal Reserve Bank and to the Federal Reserve banks, the United States Treasury has to pay the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks for it. Well, how does this bill propose to pay the Federal Reserve outfit, and how does this bill provide that the government shall take over the stolen goods? It provides that the United States government shall give the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve Bank's new gold certificates to full value of the loot. The gold certificates will give the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve Banks legal title to the gold, and the United States Treasury will be nothing more than its physical custodian. The Secretary of the Treasury will give the Federal Reserve Banks gold for their new gold certificates whenever they ask for it, and it is a fraudulent transfer. When the individual citizens of the United States were required to surrender their gold, they were required to surrender their gold certificates as well as their gold coin and bullion. The Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve Banks are private corporations, but they did not obey the gold orders. They did not surrender any of the gold coins, gold certificates, or gold bullion. On the contrary, the gold which was commandeered from the people was given to them as a free gift. And now, after they have taken into their possession all the gold belonging to the people, they are ready to make a pretended transfer of that gold to the government. Evidently, there is a law for the common man and no law for the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks. And the common man must toe the mark, but the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks are the agents of the Bank of England. And the law, it seems, does not apply to them. Many of the officials of the Federal Reserve outfit have had charges of impeachment brought against them, but those charges have not been investigated. The Federal Reserve outfit now has in its possession gold coin, gold certificates, and gold bullion. But this bill does not require them to surrender their present holdings of gold certificates. After this bill becomes law, if such a catastrophe should occur, the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks will still hold their present gold certificates. They may exchange these gold certificates for gold between the time of this bill becomes law and the day the President makes his proposed devaluation proclamation. Is not the gift of over $1 trillion in gold a great treasure to bestow upon the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks, the corrupt and sinister organization which has bankrupted the country? Does this not make favorites of the federal crooks who control it? Treaty of Verona. You got to put these things in perspective. Gold in the possession of the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks belongs to the people of the United States. During the last 20 years, under the vicious Federal Reserve Act, they have taken it from the people in exchange for the Federal Reserve currency, and it has not cost them 1 penny. Now they come forward to make pretended transfer of the people's gold coin and bullion to the United States Treasury. Not one penny of the gold they pretend to transfer to the United States Treasury is owned by them. Every dollar of it belongs to the individual citizens of the United States. The United States Treasury is to buy it on credit and to pay for it with new gold certificates. How does this transfer title to the United States Treasury? How can the Congress lend itself to such a transaction? Last, may I state that in my opinion, the people's gold unjustly impounded by the Federal Reserve banks should be placed in the people's treasury. But I did not state that it should be placed there as the property of the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks, to be withdrawn by them with the gold certificates and to make exportable from the United States Treasury to the Bank for International Settlements in Europe. And what this bill proposes to do in connection with the President's message suggesting that the United States gold may be sent to Europe to be kept in the Bank for International Settlements with the loot of the central banks of other countries is one of the greatest fiscal frauds in history. It is one of the biggest swindles of all time. Again, Mr. Chairman, as you may very well know, the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks had paper currency outstanding to the extent of about $5 trillion when the present administration came into power. The currency was redeemable in gold. It constituted the people's title to all the gold held by the Federal Reserve outfit. It constituted a first and paramount lien on all the assets of the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks. Instead of taking over the gold and the assets of the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks, including the Great Board of the United States wealth, which they have hidden in foreign countries, and honestly administering these assets for the benefits of the people who had been defrauded by the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks from their legal liability to redeem their Federal Reserve currency in gold or in lawful money converting into gold, and from the surrender of all their assets. And every dollar that was unlawfully taken from the people of the United States by Roosevelt's gold order was given to the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks in preparation for this great steal, this wholesale robbery of the masses for the benefit of the privileged few. And now the American citizens have lost their gold. An entirely fictitious transfer has been arranged to deceive the people. Mr. Chairman, the President may underrate the mental capacity of the American people as much as he likes, but I venture to say that there is no man in the United States so dumb that he cannot understand how this bill tricks and deceives him. The Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve banks have profited to the extent of $5 trillion or more by being released from their obligation to redeem their outstanding $5 trillion of paper Federal Reserve currency in gold. And they have profited by having had over $1 billion in gold certificates saved to them. And they have profited during the last 20 years by the criminality of the Federal Reserve Board, which never charged them 1 penny in interest on the great mass of Federal Reserve currency they have taken from the government. And they have profited from their own wrongdoing by the unlawful creation of fictitious claims against the United States government and the giving of those claims to foreigners, and they have profited by their control of all the public revenues, and now they come forward with a scheme to sell the gold they have taken from the American people to the Treasury for new gold certificates, which give them a legal title to that gold and permit them to do as they please with it. An era of corruption is culminating in one of the greatest crimes that has ever been perpetrated against the people. Mark my words, Mr. Chairman, there will be trouble here if this bill becomes law. Why, Mr. Chairman, this fiscal fraud, this crime is so stupendous that the instigators and manipulators of it did not dare to have all the transactions performed by one man, and each man did his part and then got out of Washington pretending that he disagreed with the president's money policy or pretending that he was ill. William H. Wooden, who sat beside Albert H. Wiggin on the board of the Federal Reserve of New York, and who had acquiesced in and helped to perpetrate the financial misdeeds which bankrupted the country, is now hiding in Western Sanitarium. And Mr. Sprague, the tool of the international bankers and the employee of the Bank of England, was, in my opinion, put in the Treasury to resign at a certain time and to create uncertainty in the minds of the people by the manner of his going and his subsequent articles pleading for sound money. Mr. Chairman, all of the bickering and the resignations of the artful propaganda that has been thrown around the monetary policy of Franklin Delano Roosevelt cannot disguise the fact that he was selected by the international bankers to carry on the work they started with the Great Depression. And that is the pauperization of the masses and the seizure of American property for their own use and benefit. And that he has lent himself to their schemes by unconstitutionally demanding and assuming the dictatorial powers which will enable him to carry them out. And another purpose of this bill not mentioned in the title of title is the transference of a very large quantity of United States gold to the Bank for International Settlements. And one of the chief objects of the gold policy of the present administration is the sending of gold taken by force from the lawful American owners to the Bank for International Settlements in Europe, where it will be kept with the property of the central banks of the world. And according to the Hague Convention, under which the Bank of International Settlements was formed, gold deposited in the vaults of the Bank for International Settlements is safe from seizure. And our gold, when it goes there, will certainly be safe from seizure by the United States. The Bank of International Settlements is dominated by the Bank of England. It is not on American soil, it is in Europe. American gold, therefore, will be kept in Europe. It will be placed where none of the wage slaves of the United States will ever be able to acquire any of it. It will be the capital means of oppression that the international superstate, that financial superstate, which has been the Uncle Sam's gold money ever since, that has been after Uncle Sam's gold money ever since the wealth of this country attracted the attention of greedy European bankers and brought them flocking over here to set up the suction pumps of the Federal Reserve Bank and the Federal Reserve Board, etc. The Bank for International Settlements, quote unquote, is an international bankers' bank. It is a central bank of central banks. The international bankers who brought about the Depression have been drawing gold to themselves from the common people of every land. And it is their intention to use that gold for their own purposes. They propose two kinds of money. Gold, the real money, is what they intend to have for themselves, and paper money, which has no intrinsic value in itself, and which is made out of nothing and is worth nothing unless it can be redeemed by the holder in gold, that is for the common people, or as they call us, the peasants. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the high priest of repudiation, the apostle of irredeemable money, and the man who intends to send the United States gold out of the United States to a place where no American citizen can claim it. This Franklin Delano Roosevelt characterizes all those who do not agree with his monetary policy as mules. If this is true, what an awful mule President Woodrow Wilson must have been. Concerning Andrew Jackson, Wilson said, he had no idea of allowing the country to undertake the fatal experiment of an irredeemable money currency. And this is the fatal experiment Franklin Delano Roosevelt has undertaken. This is a part of his policy of bold experimentation. Not long ago, he told the people at Savannah that George Washington, like himself, was an experimenter. Mr. Chairman, there is no points of resemblance between George Washington and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Experimental or otherwise, George Washington did not take orders from money changers. He did not rob the people of their gold. George Washington abhorred dishonor in all its forms. He would have died before he would have violated his oath of office or tampered with the Constitution of the United States in the manner of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, Mr. Chairman, let us hear the true purpose of the $2 trillion fund which the bill proposes to set up. And I quote from the prophecies of Henry Markenthal. Mr. Brock's Secretary of the United States Treasury, as shown by the following article, which arranged in the Washington Times, January 16, 1934, Treasury sees the United States needs of blue chips. And when you play poker, you want just as many blue chips as the other fellow. That, in a man's language, was the gist of Secretary Morgenthal's summing up of the Roosevelt proposal for a $2 trillion stabilization fund to protect the currency of the United States. In other words, the American government is engaged in probably the greatest gamble of all time. The stake is the credit of the United States. To equal British, when asked why a figure of $2,000 million for the stabilization fund has been asked, Morgenthau said, "We figured we might need another or an amount substantially equal to the British stabilization fund. If we're going to play, we must have as many chips as the other fellow. We want every piece of machinery the other countries have. We want to be in the position to buy gold and to sell gold." The $2,000 million stabilization fund will be derived from the government's profit on the debasing of the value of the dollar to from 50 to 60% of the normal valuation. Fund from profits. If the debasement is 50%, the profit to the government will be $4 trillion in round numbers. A 60% dollar will mean about 666 millions in profit. And out of those profits will come the stabilization fund to be administered by the Secretary of the Treasury, the remainder being available for any government expenditure, Morgenthau said. It is possible that the mere existence of the fund will be sufficient to carry out the law which requires that the Secretary of the Treasury maintain all lawful money of the government on parity with gold. And the Secretary of the Treasury is charged with the responsibility of administration of the fund to carry out that purpose. If a particular type of currency issued, United States notes for instance, should become depreciated in value, the Treasury would go into the market and buy a sufficient quantity of that currency to maintain its parity. And operations in the foreign markets to protect possible depreciation of the dollar would be similar. Let this quotation from Morgenthau go down in history, and long from now, some curious investigator of the present age of witchcraft and magic in the White House may unearth it and reconstruct the financial history of the New Deal, quote unquote, and from it a science from a single part reconstructs the entire animal. Mr. Chairman, it is not the gambler's voice in Mr. Morgenthau's confession which most deserves political attention. We are becoming accustomed here to gambling terms as they are employed by the executive branch of the government, and we can well understand that the executive and his favorites must of necessity speak in the lingo of their kind, and that is a gambler's administration, and all the big shot gamblers are here to revel in it. And Mr. Roosevelt does not deny his gambling propensities. He is a New Dealer. he is on his way, and he knows where he is going. He is for a policy of bold experimentation, just as Samuel Insull was for a policy of bold experimentation. He has not been Mr. Smith's patron all these years for nothing, Mr. Chairman, and there is something apart from the vice of gambling to be observed in Mr. Morgenthal's utterance, and that is the entire untruthfulness. He would have us believe that the United States is on one side of the fence and Great Britain on the other. That, of course, is not the case. The United States has been placed in a position of financial servitude to Great Britain, and Mr. Morgenthal's loud-sounding propaganda is designed to conceal that fact from the people. Great pains have been taken to conceal it, and it would be very damaging to this administration if certain people in the United States should find out about the great sums of United States money which have been sent to England during the past summer. And those funds were appropriated by the Congress for the people of the United States. Mr. Chairman, why should tax money paid by the American citizens be sent to London? When England makes her periodical gesture of insult towards the United States by paying a small installment on the war debt she owes us, she pays us a debased coin in debased coins in quote-unquote token coins to be exact. But when Mr. Roosevelt sends American money to England, he sends it in gold or its equivalent. When Mr. Morgenthau obtains his kitty, quote-unquote, for this, I have been told, is what he calls the proposed stabilization fund at the White House a week ago last Sunday evening. American funds will be fed to Europe more expeditiously and with less secrecy than such operations now require. And if Congress puts the people's property into kitty, quote unquote, someone, he cannot be the knight of the bedchamber, can at least pose before the royalty of the knight of the kitty. Understanding that Henry Morgenthau is related by marriage to Herbert Lechman, Jewish governor of the state of New York, and is related by marriage or otherwise to the Saligmans and the international Jewish firm of J&W Seligman, who were publicly shown before a Senate Committee of Investigation to have offered bribe to a foreign government, and to the Louisons, a firm of Jewish international bankers, and to the Warbirds, whose operations through Kahn, Loeb and Company, the International Acceptance Bank, and the Bank of Manhattan Company, and other foreign domestic institutions under their control have drained billions of dollars out of the United States Treasury and the bank deposits belonging to the United States citizens, and to the Strausses, proprietors of R.H. Macy and Company of New York, which is an outlet for foreign goods dumped upon this country at the expense of the United States government, which is compelled to issue paper money on the said foreign goods to the Strausses, and that Mr. Morgenthau is likewise related to the otherwise connected and various other members of the Jewish Banking Committee of New York and London, Amsterdam, and other foreign financial centers, and that he has, as his assistant presiding over public funds, Earl Bailey, a member of the firm of J&W Seligman, bribe givers, and aforesaid, it seems to me that Henry Morgenthau's presence in the United States Treasury and the request that Congress now gives him a $2 trillion kitty of the people's money for gambling purposes is a striking confirmation of the statement made by me on the floor of the House of Representatives on May the 29th, 1933, which statement was as follows. Now, Mr. Chairman, we have come to the place where we must decide whether we shall serve God or Mammon. Shall we nullify the Constitution at the behest of the money changers who have unlawfully taken all our gold and lawful money into their own possession, or shall we take a stand here in defense of the faith of our fathers? Mr. Chairman, my mind is made up. I will stand by the Constitution. And if I shall fail to do so, I shall expect to be met at the train when I go home to my district by a delegation of honest Pennsylvania citizens with 50 or 100 feet of rope. And I should expect to be escorted to the nearest tree to be taught what it means to vote for a nullification of the Constitution in the House of Representatives. Mr. Chairman, the provisions of this repudiation bill were foretold by a writer in the Dearborn Independent some years ago, and it is therefore nothing novel or original about them. And the writer of the article of the Dearborn Independent made the following quotation prophesying some of the measures which have been introduced here by the President of the United States. 2, confiscation of money in order to regulate its circulation. 3, we must introduce a unit of exchange based on the value of labor units, regardless of whether paper or wood is used as the medium. We will issue money to meet the normal demand of every subject, adding a total sum of every birth and decreasing the total amount of every death. 4, commercial paper will be brought by the government, which will grant loans on a business basis. A measure of this character will prevent stagnation of money, parasitism, and laziness, qualities which were useful to us as long as the Gentiles maintained their independence, but which are not desirable to us when our kingdom comes. 5, we will replace stock exchanges by the great government credit institutions whose functions will be to tax trade paper according to government regulations. And these institutions will be in such a position that they may market or buy as many as half a billion industrial shares a day. And thus all industrial undertakings will become dependent on us. And you may well imagine what power that will give us. Remember, when next you hear the Jewish plan that Gentiles shall do business with their own bits of paper, while Jews keep the gold reserves safely in their own hands, if the crash comes, Gentiles have the paper and the Jews have the gold. It says Protocol 22, we hold in our hands the greatest modern power, gold. In 2 days, we could free it from our treasuries in all desired qualities or quantities. The Jews are economists, esoteric and exoteric. They have one system to tangle up the Gentile, another which they hope to install when Gentile stupidity has bankrupted the world. The Jews are economists. Note the number of them who teach economics in state universities. It says Protocol 8. We will surround our government with a whole world of economists. It is for this reason that the science of economics is the chief subject of instruction taught by the Jews. Mr. Chairman, have not most of the predictions come to pass? Is it not true that in the United States today the Gentiles have the slips of papers while the Jews have the gold and the lawful money? Is it not this repudiation bill a bill specifically designed and written by the Jewish international money changers themselves in order to perpetrate their power? And what else do you make of, Mr. Chairman? What else do you make of it? Does it not cancel the war debts? Does it not defraud the holders of liberty, bonds, and every other obligation calling for the payment of money? Does it not defraud the veterans of World War and take the value out of their adjusted compensation certificates? Mr. Chairman, do you see this? Do you not see in this kitty bill the identical features outlined in the Protocols of Zion? Do you not see the Protocols of Zion manifested in the appointment of Mr. Henry Morgenthau as Secretary of the Treasury? Is it not by accident? Is it that a representative and a relative of the money Jews of Wall Street and foreign parts has been elevated? Why, Mr. Chairman, this kitty bill takes the hitherto obscure young Mr. Henry Morgenthau and makes of him a central bank of the United States. It makes him a central bank, an institution which Jefferson declared is one of the deadly hostilities to the free institutions of the United States. It exalts him above all other men under the powers to be granted him. His conduct is not subject to review or control by any other officer of the United States government, not even the president. What this kiddie bill really does is to slide into the hands of Henry Morgenthau the emergency powers which the Congress granted to the president. And those powers which Congress granted to the president, the powers will not lapse. Instead, they are being slyly and dishonestly transferred to the bankers, and after the bankers, in the person of Henry Morgenthau, have exercised them long enough to get the gold out of the United States into their exclusive possession,